they flagged you. The Illuminati. Yes, that shadowy collective pulling strings behind velvet curtains just marked your digital fingerprint as uncontrollable. Not dangerous, not radical, uncontrollable. Because you're the glitch in their algorithm. The variable that refuses to compute, the chaos they can't categorize or contain. Welcome to the real game. Let me tell you something they don't want you to realize. Every system, every corporation, every institution, every social structure thrives on predictability. They need you to follow patterns, wake up at the alarm, scroll on command, buy what's trending, react how they expect, stay inside the lines they've drawn around your consciousness. But here's the secret they're terrified you'll discover. The moment you become unpredictable, you become ungovernable. And ungovernable people? They rewrite reality. You've felt it, haven't you? That electric charge running through your spine when you do something completely outside your usual script. When you speak the truth, everyone's thinking, but nobody dares vocalize. When you walk away from the safe choice and into the unknown. That's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. That's your authentic frequency breaking through the static of conditioned behavior. That's the real you, the unedited version, pushing against the boundaries of who you were told to be. The Illuminati, the powers that be, whatever you want to call the orchestrators of consensus reality. They invest billions into behavioral prediction. Every click you make, every pause in your scroll, every emotional reaction they can track. It all feeds into algorithms designed to anticipate your next move. They can predict with disturbing accuracy what you'll do tomorrow based on what you did yesterday. But you know what crashes their entire system? When someone stops being consistent. When someone evolves faster than they can model. When someone becomes uncontrollable. Think about the last time you felt truly alive. I'm not talking about happy or comfortable or entertained. I'm talking about that raw, electric aliveness that comes when you're standing on the edge of something that could transform everything. Maybe it was the moment before you quit that soul-crushing job. Maybe it was the instant before you spoke your mind to someone who assumed your silence. Maybe it was when you finally stopped performing the role everyone expected and just existed as yourself, unfiltered. That feeling, that's what it means to be uncontrollable. That's your power signature. But here's where most people stumble. They get that glimpse of their own wildness, their own unpredictability, and they panic. They retreat back into the comfort of patterns. Because patterns feel safe. Predictable feels safe. Being categorizable feels safe. And that's exactly where they want you, in the illusion of safety, trading your evolution for the appearance of stability. Look around. Really look. The people who changed the world, who disrupted industries, who shifted culture, they weren't the smartest in the room. They weren't always the most talented. They were the most unpredictable. The ones who zigged when conventional wisdom said zag. The ones who built when everyone said destroy. The ones who stayed silent when provoked and roared when everyone expected compliance. They were uncontrollable variables in a system designed to produce uniform results. You want to know why they flagged your profile? Because somewhere in your digital footprint, in your pattern of choices, you stopped behaving like a predictable unit of consumption. Maybe you started asking questions that don't have comfortable answers. Maybe you stopped engaging with content designed to keep you distracted. Maybe you began building something that doesn't fit into their categories. Whatever it was, you triggered their alert system. You became interesting, dangerous, worth watching. And here's what they don't tell you about being flagged. It's not a warning, it's a confirmation. You're doing something right. You're becoming the kind of person who can't be marketed to, manipulated, or managed. You're developing an internal compass that doesn't need external validation. You're building a life that doesn't require their approval or fit their templates. The rabbit hole goes deeper than you think. Every limiting belief you've ever held about yourself, installed. Every fear that keeps you playing small, programmed. Every doubt that whispers, who do you think you are? Implanted. Not by some secret society at a dark room, though that makes for compelling narrative, but by a system that functions optimally when everyone stays in their assigned role. Teacher teaches. Worker works, consumer consumes, everyone stays in their lane, maintains their pattern, remains controllable. But what happens when you step outside your lane? When you stop consuming and start creating? when you question the narrative instead of repeating it, when you build bridges between ideas that were never supposed to connect, you become what every rigid system fears most: unpredictable complexity. You become a person who can't be reduced to a demographic, can't be captured by a label, can't be contained by expectations. I know what you're thinking. This sounds paranoid, conspiratorial, dramatic. And maybe it is. Or maybe, just maybe, you've been conditioned to dismiss these thoughts as crazy, so you never examine them too closely. Maybe the quickest way to neutralize someone who's starting to wake up is to make them afraid of sounding crazy, to make them police their own expansion, to make them choose comfortable conformity over uncomfortable truth. Here's a question that'll keep you up tonight. When was the last time you did something that surprised even yourself? Not shocked yourself with a mistake or scared yourself with a risk, but genuinely surprised yourself with a capability you didn't know you possessed? If you can't remember, you've been living in pattern mode. You've been executing the same loops, thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, getting the same results. You've been predictable. Predictable people don't get flagged. Predictable people don't disrupt anything. Predictable people are invisible to the powers that be because they're already behaving exactly as designed. They're happy in their carefully constructed reality, never noticing the bars on the cage because the cage is decorated so beautifully. But you noticed something was off. Maybe you couldn't articulate it at first. Maybe it was just a feeling, that subtle sense that the game you've been playing was rigged from the start, that the rules you've been following were written by people who benefit from you following them, that the dreams you've been chasing might not actually be your dreams at all. That awareness, that's your signal. That's the moment the caterpillar realizes it's not meant to be a faster caterpillar. It's meant to completely transform into something that flies. That's when the system flags you, because transformation is unpredictable. Metamorphosis can't be controlled. And people who undergo real evolution, they become uncontrollable. Now let me share something they definitely don't want you to know. Your unpredictability isn't chaos. It's not randomness for randomness' sake. It's strategic evolution. It's intelligent adaptation. It's the ability to read a situation, assess the obvious path, and then choose the non-obvious move that changes the entire game. Chess masters don't win by making predictable moves. They win by making moves their opponents can't anticipate. They win by being uncontrollable within a controlled environment. That's your path forward. Not rebellion without purpose, not chaos without direction, but strategic unpredictability, intelligent non-conformity, conscious evolution that refuses to be categorized, controlled, or contained. So what does this actually look like in practice? It looks like the entrepreneur who ignores market research and builds what shouldn't exist. It looks like the artist who creates work that doesn't fit any genre. It looks like the person who builds a life so specific to their values that it can't be replicated or monetized or turned into a template. It looks like you, making choices that make sense to you but confuse everyone else. And yes, being uncontrollable comes with consequences. People will misunderstand you. They'll project their fears onto your choices. They'll call you impulsive when you're being intuitive. They'll call you reckless when you're being strategic. They'll call you crazy when you're being sane in an insane system. Let them. Their confusion is confirmation that you're on the right path. Here's the truth. They buried under layers of conditioning you were never meant to fit. The fact that you feel like a square peg in a world of round holes isn't a defect. It's your design. You're the anomaly that proves the system isn't absolute. You're the glitch that reveals there are other possibilities. You're the uncontrollable element that reminds everyone else they don't have to stay controllable either. But with great unpredictability comes great responsibility. You can't be uncontrollable and unconscious. You can't break patterns without understanding why they existed. You can't disrupt systems without considering the ripple effects. Your unpredictability must be paired with wisdom. Your chaos must be conscious. Your revolution must be internal before it becomes external. This is where most rebels fail. They reject the system without building something better. They tear down without constructing. They become unpredictable in ways that harm themselves and others. True uncontrollability isn't about destruction. It's about creation. It's about building a life so authentic, so aligned, so genuinely you that it becomes unreplicable. That's the kind of unpredictability that changes everything. Think about water for a moment. Water doesn't fight the rock. It doesn't rebel against obstacles with force. It simply flows around, over, under, completely unpredictable in its path, but absolutely consistent in its nature. Over time, that unpredictable flow carves canyons through solid stone. That's your model. Be like water, soft enough to find every opening, persistent enough to reshape mountains, unpredictable enough to be uncontainable. The Illuminati, the system, the matrix, whatever you want to call it, it functions on one core assumption: that people will choose comfort over growth, that you'll take the predictable path because the unpredictable one feels too risky, that you'll stay in your lane because crossing lanes requires courage you might not possess. They're betting everything on your fear. They're counting on your conditioning. They're predicting you'll stay controllable. Prove them wrong. Not through some dramatic gesture, not through public rebellion, but through quiet, consistent, strategic unpredictability. Make choices that serve your evolution, not their expectations. Build a life that expresses your values, not their templates. Develop capabilities that don't fit job descriptions. Create art that doesn't fit algorithms. Think thoughts that don't fit categories. Become ungovernable by becoming undeniable. Become uncontrollable by becoming unavoidably yourself. Become unpredictable by becoming so deeply connected to your authentic frequency that external pressures can't shift your signal. And watch what happens. Watch how opportunities appear that don't make logical sense. Watch how people who resonate with your frequency find you. Watch how doors open that weren't even visible when you were walking the predictable path. Watch how the universe, or whatever orchestrates this reality, responds to your willingness to color outside the lines. This is your permission slip. No, scratch that. You don't need permission. This is your reminder. You were born uncontrollable. You were born with infinite potential and zero preset programming. Everything that made you predictable was learned, which means it can be unlearned. Everything that made you controllable was installed, which means it can be deleted. Everything that kept you in pattern was conditioned, which means it can be deprogrammed. The chaos has begun. But it's not external chaos. It's not the world falling apart. It's internal chaos. The necessary destruction of false patterns, limiting beliefs, and borrowed dreams. It's the chaos of transformation. The chaos of becoming. The chaos of evolution that can't be controlled, predicted, or contained. They flagged your profile because you're waking up. They flagged you because you're asking questions. They flagged you because somewhere in your recent behavior, you stopped being a predictable unit and started being an unpredictable force. They flagged you because you're becoming uncontrollable. And that's exactly where your power lives, in that space between who you were told to be and who you're becoming. In that gap between the predictable path and the uncharted territory. In that moment when you choose the uncomfortable truth over the comfortable lie. That's where the magic happens. That's where transformation occurs. That's where uncontrollable people are born. Let me paint you a picture of what controllable looks like. It's the person who scrolls through their phone at exactly the same time every morning, consuming the same type of content, feeling the same emotions, reinforcing the same neural pathways. It's the individual who says, "I'm not good at that," without ever trying. It's the one who dreams in whispers but never screams their vision into existence. It's the human who waits for permission, waits for the right time, waits for conditions to be perfect. It's the person who deletes social media for a month just to see what happens to their brain. It's the individual who learns a skill everyone said was too difficult, just to prove the limitation was imaginary. It's the one who starts a conversation with, "This might sound wild, but," and actually follows through on the wild idea. It's the human who moves to a new city with no plan, who pivots careers at 40, who writes the book everyone said wouldn't sell, who builds the thing that can't be done. Uncontrollable is unpredictable. Unpredictable is unforgettable. You're somewhere on that spectrum right now. Maybe you're 80% controllable, 20% chaos. Maybe it's 50-50. Maybe you're already 90% uncontrollable and you're just looking for validation that you're not losing your mind. Here's the validation. You're not losing your mind. You're finding your frequency, and your frequency doesn't match the standard broadcast anymore. That dissonance you feel, that's not anxiety. That's evolution. That uncomfortable sensation when you're around people who still operate on autopilot, that's not superiority. That's recognition that you're tuning to a different station. That restlessness that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning, that's not insomnia. That's your soul trying to download the blueprint for your next level. But here's where it gets interesting. The system doesn't just want you controllable, it wants you to believe you're free while being controlled. It's the most sophisticated con in human history. Give people the illusion of choice, while all the choices lead to the same destination. Let them think they're rebels while they're following predetermined rebellion templates. Make them feel unique while they're doing exactly what millions of others are doing. You've seen it. The entrepreneur who follows the exact same course as 10,000 other entrepreneurs. They think they've escaped. But they've just traded one cage for another, prettier cage. Real uncontrollability doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't have a community of people doing the exact same thing. It doesn't fit into a movement or a trend or a hashtag. It's lonely sometimes. It's confusing often. It requires you to trust yourself more than you trust any external authority. And that terrifies most people. Because here's the secret they really don't want you to know. Being uncontrollable means taking full responsibility for your life. You can't blame the system if you're not playing by its rules. You can't complain about the game if you've created your own game. You can't point fingers at external forces when you're the force creating your reality. True freedom comes with the weight of total accountability. Most people say they want freedom. What they actually want is comfort without consequences. They want to make bold moves without risk. They want to be unique without being misunderstood. They want to be uncontrollable without being uncomfortable. And that's why they stay controllable. Because controllable comes with instructions. Predictable comes with approval. Conformity comes with belonging. But you're reading this because some part of you is tired of instructions. Some part of you is exhausted from seeking approval. Some part of you is suffocating in the false belonging of conformity. That part? That's your uncontrollable self. That's the version of you that's been waiting in the wings, watching you play it safe, wondering when you're finally going to let it take center stage. The Illuminati flagged you because that part is getting louder. That uncontrollable frequency is bleeding through your carefully constructed persona. You're starting to make moves that don't compute in their prediction models. You're asking questions that don't have approved answers. You're thinking thoughts that don't fit into their categories. And here's what happens next. They'll try to pull you back, not through obvious force. That's too crude, too noticeable. They'll use subtlety. They'll use your friends who suddenly express concern about your choices. They'll use your family who reminds you to be realistic. They'll use your own inner voice that sounds suspiciously like every authority figure who ever told you to stay small. They'll weaponize your fear of being alone, your desire for validation, your need to belong. This is the test. This is where most people break, because the pressure to conform, to be predictable, to be controllable, it's intense, it's relentless. It comes from every direction, and it's disguised as caring. We just want what's best for you. Translation: we want you to stay in a box we understand. But what if what's best for you is becoming incomprehensible to people operating on old programming? What if your evolution requires you to become someone they can't understand with their current level of consciousness? What if your path demands you abandon the need for their approval and trust your own inner knowing? This is where the real chaos begins. Not external chaos, internal chaos. The chaos of dismantling everything you thought you knew about yourself. The chaos of questioning beliefs you've held since childhood. The chaos of realizing that 90% of your personality might be borrowed. The chaos of discovering that who you really are has nothing to do with who you've been pretending to be. It's terrifying. It's exhilarating. It's the most alive you'll ever feel, because you're finally meeting yourself. The real you, the uncontrollable you, the version that doesn't need permission or approval or validation from anyone, the version that trusts its own guidance system more than any external GPS, the version that knows, bone deep, that being understood is optional, but being authentic is essential. Let me tell you about a particular type of person who gets flagged most often. It's not the loudest person in the room. It's not the most overtly rebellious. It's the quiet one who suddenly starts saying no. No to obligations that drain them. No to relationships that diminish them. No to opportunities that distract them? No to versions of themselves that aren't authentic. That person, that's the one who scares the system most, because that person has discovered the most powerful word in any language. No is how you take your power back. No is how you create boundaries. No is how you protect your energy. No is how you honor your truth. And a person who's learned to say no to everything that isn't aligned, that person is uncontrollable, because you can't manipulate someone who's clear about what they will and won't accept. You can't guilt trip someone who's comfortable disappointing others to stay true to themselves. You can't pressure someone who'd rather be alone than betray their values. The system runs on yes. Say yes to the job that kills your soul but pays the bills. Say yes to the relationship that looks good on paper but feels hollow. Say yes to the life path that makes sense to everyone except you. Say yes, say yes, say yes, until you've said yes so many times to everyone else that you've forgotten what your own yes feels like. Your uncontrollable self knows how to say no. Not rudely, not defensively, but clearly, firmly, without explanation or apology. No, that doesn't align with my path. No, that's not how I'm choosing to spend my energy. No, I'm creating something different. And then, and this is crucial, not waiting for permission to move forward anyway. Because here's what controllable people do. They say no, then wait to see if the no is accepted. They're still seeking approval for their boundaries. They're still asking permission to honor themselves. Uncontrollable people? They say no and keep walking. They don't need you to understand. They don't need you to agree. They don't need you to validate their choice. They simply honor their truth and move forward. This is the shift that changes everything. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop justifying your choices, when you stop defending your path, when you simply live it unapologetically, whether anyone understands or not, that's when you become truly uncontrollable. Because there's nothing to argue with, there's nothing to negotiate, there's just you in your power, creating your reality. And the beautiful thing, the terrifying thing, once you make this shift, there's no going back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you've learned. You can't unfeel what you've felt. You've tasted what it means to be uncontrollable, and controllable will never taste right again. It'll be like trying to fit back into clothes you've outgrown. Technically possible, completely uncomfortable, ultimately unsustainable. Choose the familiar comfort of controllable, or choose the electric unknown of uncontrollable. Stay in the cage decorated to look like freedom, or step into actual freedom that comes with zero guarantees. Keep executing the same patterns that lead to the same results, or disrupt everything and see what emerges. The Illuminati, the system, the powers that be, they're hoping you'll choose comfortable predictability. They're betting you'll retreat back into pattern. They're counting on your fear being stronger than your curiosity. They've flagged you, but they're still hoping it's a false alarm. They're still hoping you'll prove to be controllable after all. Don't give them the satisfaction. The algorithm was designed to predict you, but you were designed to evolve beyond prediction. Drop a sheet if you're ready to be uncontrollable. Comment. One way you're breaking pattern this week. Let's build an army of beautiful, strategic chaos.